All right, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jesse, and I am your virtual adventure guide here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Now, today we are joined with the teams at UTSC and the Toronto Zoo for a tripartite extravaganza. Very, very special broadcast today for International Reptile Day. We'll get into that in just a minute, but I wanted to start by welcoming you to the program. Thank you so much for joining us as we continue to showcase and celebrate such amazing people and places around the globe. Now, over the last few years, we've had the chance to partner with the Toronto Zoo on a bevy of incredible programs. All of these are on our YouTube channel if you want to check us out at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Everything from animal camouflage to coverings to different pavilions. They do so much amazing work at the Toronto Zoo, and I really encourage you to check it out. Now, for today's program, we are going to dive in with my favorite group of creatures. When most kids were growing up, they like things with fur, feathers, cuddly mammals, cute birds, all those things. And those animals are great. Don't get me wrong, we've covered them before, but my favorite thing was always reptiles. I grew up with Steve Irwin as my hero, so crocodiles, snakes, lizards, turtles, and more are such spectacular creatures, and today is a pretty special day. Now, we all know about Christmas and Diwali and Halloween and Thanksgiving and all these other great holidays, but today, drum roll please, is the biggest holiday of them all, and it is International Reptile Day. And so we are going to be joined by the Toronto Zoo team and by Mark Fitzpatrick at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus to talk a little bit about these incredible creatures, what they do at the zoo to conserve them, some of their cool adaptations, and so much more. Buckle up if you're as excited as I am. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Ellen and Morgan at the zoo to blow our minds and take us away, and welcome in to absolutely all of you. Mary Ellen, Morgan, welcome in.
Hello, thank you so very much. We're so excited to be here with you today. We are standing live in our Australasia segment of the Toronto Zoo, and we are so excited to introduce you to a few different types of reptiles, some that live here and some that live in other parts of the world, including here in Ontario as well. So we're going to learn all about them and be able to talk about what it takes to save a species. So before we get started though, I am going to have you, Jesse, if you'd like to bring up our land recognition here for us. We just want to make sure that we acknowledge that the land that we are standing on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Massasauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa of the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Massasauga of the Credit and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Massasauga and Chippewa bands. Thank you so much, Jesse. So our first segment here, even though we are in the Australasia Pavilion here, like I mentioned, we actually have our Komodo Dragon Keelat behind us. Don't worry though, we're gonna get face-to-face time with him in a moment. We'll be sure to show him off. He's taking a little nap though, getting ready for the camera right now. I'm gonna have Jesse bring up a quick little video to help show a really cool program that we actually have here at the Toronto Zoo and how we are able to help save species when they are declining in their numbers in the wild. So Jesse's got a video here for us that we're gonna watch together, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about it. So here at the Toronto Zoo, we like to talk about what's called the tip of the iceberg, and that's the picture that we're looking at here right now. And what that means really is that when you come to the zoo and you see our animals, you're just seeing the very surface level. You're not able to see everything we're able to do behind the scenes. And that's why these videos are so absolutely incredible, because you get a glimpse behind the scenes, and you're able to see all these amazing breeding programs that we participate in. Now, this is actually our Head Start program. So bit of a mislead there by me for a breeding program, as we don't currently breed this species, but they are found natively here in Ontario. And they're called the Blandings Turtles. And one of our friends here in the video is about to pick one up for us there. There we go. We've got a nice close-up view of them. And you can really easily tell a Blandings turtle because they have a very bright yellow chin. And I want to make sure you know exactly what they look like, because if you're from Ontario and you're ever out exploring or adventuring around, there's a good chance that you might come across them if you're near a marsh or a wetland area. And unfortunately, this species is having a really hard time in the wild right now. Their numbers are declining due to habitat loss. So what we do here at the Toronto Zoo is we will actually find nests, so they're eggs when they're just little hatchlings, barely born. We'll collect them, and then we keep them here at the Toronto Zoo for 2 years. Then we let them grow. Now, this is really important. We're measuring their size here, and we do this to make sure that they are big enough and strong enough that when we put them back in the wild, they're going to be able to survive. And we can see here, this is part of our Adopt Upon team. Now, they are a wonderful section of our Toronto Zoo, full of some amazing, amazing people who are so passionate about species conservation. And you can see here, they've put a little tracker on our turtle's back. I've got one here to show you in a second in person. And they've got a little tracker there, and they're releasing him back into the wild so he can help, or she can repopulate the next species. So that's what they look like when we release them back into the wild. All right, Jesse here, I'm gonna have you cut the video a little bit short for us because I've got some other cool things to show us. So to give you an idea of their size, when they're born, whoop, there we go, we're upside down. They're about the size of a toonie, or about this big. And when you're that small, everything can eat you. It's a pretty hard life out there when you're this tiny of a turtle. So we want to make sure they actually have a shot to be able to survive. So we grow them to 2 years old, which is about the size of a baked potato. Now, when you compare the two, a firstborn to a 2-year-old, you can see a pretty big difference here. So we grow them up so they're nice and strong, their shells are really hard, and they're able to fully survive on their own. Now, I'm gonna flip the camera around here for 1 second just so I can grab a few more props. So give me just a moment here, and we'll be able to flip it around here so I can show you how we're able to make sure that they are back in the wild and safe in the wild as well. So I'm gonna hand the camera over to my friend Morgan, and I'm gonna grab some very cool equipment. So this is what our Adopt Upon team uses after they release a turtle back into the wild. So they take these tiny little trackers right here. I've got an example for us. It's got a little bit of an antenna there, and they are able to glue these to the back of the turtle shell. Now, don't worry, they don't really feel it. It doesn't bother them. And sometimes they do fall off and we have to go find them, but it's great when they do stay on because it allows us to see where that turtle goes. Now, this is pretty tiny. How are we able to track this? Well, we use all this equipment. So this is kind of like our locator, and it's the way that we're able to find them. And then this is our transmitter, and this is actually how we find it. So our team goes out into the marshes after they've released some turtles. They turn on all their equipment here. It's quite fancy. And they're able to scan with their machine, looking over top of all the water. And when they get close to one of our little transmitters, it starts beeping. And they're looking for a specific range on their machine. It's kind of like a radio that you have in your car, and you flip between all your different stations. Some of them are a little fuzzy, and some of them are really clear, and you can hear the music or the people talking. That's exactly what they do with this equipment here, and they're able to find and locate all of the turtles that they've released. Now, you might be asking, Marilyn, why do we care? Once we put them back in the wild, it's see you later, turtles. We've given you a great 2 years. You're on your own now. But we really do care about where they go, because where the turtles end up is where the new nesting spots might be. And we need to go and find them to see if we can help the next generation make sure that they picked a good nesting spot. If it's next to a road, probably not a great location. So we want to make sure that they're safe, happy, and healthy. And we want to see where their favorite spots are to live, because then we can work together to try and save that location. Now, there's actually a way that you can help out at home if you're really passionate about turtles and reptiles, which I'm going to let everyone in the comments right now flood Jesse with lots of comments. Do we love turtles and reptiles? I hope yes. Jesse, what's the response?
I mean, we're good there. You only asked it 2 seconds ago. We're going to get flooded in like a second here. I think, out of all the programs we had this month, we've had astronauts, cave divers, world-class explorers. Everyone in this broadcast chose to come here for reptiles. So now we're starting to get flooded. We're obsessed with the reptiles, Mary Ellen. What a surprise.
I love it. That's incredible. I also love them, and I know that we should care all about them. Oh, we got a group coming in here in a second. So all of these turtle species and different amphibians and reptiles that are in the wild, when you are out and about looking for them, if you have an adult in your life who has a cell phone, you can actually get a very special app on your phone called Adopt a Pond, and it looks just like this. And this app is in front of you here. You can download it, and when you see reptiles and amphibians out in the wild, you can report a sighting of them. So we want to make sure that these animals are left undisturbed, and that we make sure we don't go up to them, we don't go and see them. But if you take a photo and report it the location, we go out and make sure that that animal is okay and safe. And by doing this, we can make sure that if there's any turtles who have a bad nesting spot, we can help them and make sure they're safe and maybe bring them into our Head Start program. All right, it's gotten a little bit louder in here. We've had a couple school groups come in because we are doing back on-site in-person school visits. So I think we're going to take this opportunity to switch over to our next species we're going to talk about. And we're also going to move a little bit down the way here to make sure we can talk about them here. All right, Jesse, if you wouldn't mind bringing up our next video for us. We are going to talk about our snake friends now.
Ooh, I must admit, as we're pulling this up, the snakes are my very favorite kind of creature. I had a pet snake growing up, and they are just the most extraordinary animals on the planet. If you're a little afraid of snakes, hopefully this helps change your mind a little bit as we get to hang out with some live snakes and play our video here. Awesome.
All right, and so we have Morgan here with us now to talk about all about these incredible snakes.
Hey, hi everyone. As Mary Ellen said, my name is Morgan. Sorry it's really loud in here. I know it's hard. So I work in the Wildlife and Science Department, which means I get to work with the people who focus on our amazing breeding programs here at the Toronto Zoo. So unlike the head starting program with the turtles, we actually also have breeding programs here where we let animals breed and hopefully repopulate populations one day in the wild. So one of our breeding programs that we have here are for the Eastern Massasauga rattlesnake. So this rattlesnake is the only venomous snake in all of Ontario, and there's only 2 populations of these snakes in Ontario, and they all live by Lake Huron. So here at the Toronto Zoo, they're part of a species survival plan. So the Eastern Massasauga snakes, part of this plan, we can then decide where they go, what zoos they go to, and who they breed with. Perfect. So here's some of our snakes here. As you can see on the screen, we've got this isn't our Massasauga snake. This is another one of our green camouflage snakes. And you can show the video to Jesse. I'm just there we go. There's the Eastern Massasauga snake there that you're seeing on your screen. So here at the zoo since 2006, we've been part of their breeding program. This allows the zoo to breed snakes in a safe space. So like Mary Ellen was saying, baby snakes can be really, really small, which makes them a really easy target for predators. So if they're here at the zoo protected, we're able to breed them, allow them to be born safely, and grow to a good size where they kind of stand a bit more of a chance in the wild there. So the really amazing thing is this program has expanded over the many years. So back a few years ago when we maybe only had a few rattlesnakes born, this year we had over 20 rattlesnakes born. So it's really exciting. Our program is expanding more and more. So another great part of having baby snakes here at the Toronto Zoo is we can also do research on them. So with having these snakes here, we're able to study them. We can study their behaviors from when they're little babies to grown adults. We can study how they mate together, how they interact with each other, what they like to eat, and how they hibernate. So we can learn all sorts of things about them, and this also helps us make sure they're successful in the future. One really, really cool thing that the Toronto Zoo is trying to do now is learn how to tell if an Eastern Massasauga snake is a male or a female without really harming them or handling them too much. Eastern Massasauga rattlesnakes are really, really shy. So unlike other snakes, they really hide from predators, they hide from people. Perfect. So because they hide a lot, it's really hard to study them. Perfect. Sorry.
All right. So because they hide from people, it can be a little bit harder to be able to interact with them and find them. And so we don't want to disturb them in their natural habitat. We're showing off an example here. These are our red-tailed green rat snakes, and they are a very kind of social animal. They love coming up. If you've seen in the past, we did a video with Jesse on thermoregulation and how animals control their temperature in their body and in their habitat. And these snakes here put on quite the show for us. Now we have one more quick animal to talk about, but we are going to do a quick little kind of pivot with the school group that's in here. So what I'm going to do really quickly, Jesse, if you want to take over for one quick second, we're going to mute ourselves for a moment, and we're going to pass by the school group really quickly here.
Fantastic. I'll put you guys in the background ever so briefly. Way to go making that work with so many kids around you. But I will note again, if you guys want to head to the Toronto Zoo, they are open for school groups now. So if you happen to be in the general Toronto area, they do really incredible work to bring the world of conservation, science, nature education to classrooms. So do check that out, torontozoo.com. You can look at booking that. My whole childhood was in Toronto, growing up with the Toronto Zoo. So a lot of my formative nature and wildlife experiences were there, and I can't encourage you to head there enough. They're doing some really, really great work. One last thing before we head to our next species, we're just getting set up. Morgan noted the species survival plan. This is something that we've been talking about in a lot of our Toronto Zoo programs over the last couple of years. I really encourage our audience to check these out. This sort of explains why zoos sometimes trade animals amidst one another, why they go about the work that they do and the way that they do it. So species survival plan is something you're going to increasingly see in conservation and zoo programs internationally. Looks like Mary Ellen's got with our next species. We've done turtles, we've done snakes. What's next in the docket? It looks like a fantastic lizard.
All right, we're back at our final quick point that we wanted to talk about here. So people might actually be able to recognize this animal pretty easily. This is a bearded dragon, and we actually have a few of them living in this exhibit here. These three are having a nice little bask right now in their sun lamps. If we just point the camera up, we can see them. But what I really wanted to talk about here is we absolutely love reptiles. They are so cool. Everyone finds them so interesting, and they're a very unique type of different species of animals. And that makes them somewhat of a hot commodity in pet world. So a lot of people want to own or have different reptile species as pets, and a bearded dragon is a great example of why we need to be careful with where we're getting our pets from. So they are from Australia, and for a very long time, if you wanted a pet bearded dragon, they had to be taken from the wild and then shipped to other parts of the world. And it wasn't until breeders in other countries in the world started captive breeding them, where there became a steady supply of them for people to own as pets. So my last message to everyone on the call today, not only can you download the Adopt Upon app to help out local species here, more apps like that if you're from other states as well, or other countries in the world. But you can also make sure that if you're going to purchase a pet, especially an exotic pet or a reptile, make sure you do your research on where you're getting them from, and that the breeder is somebody who breeds them ethically and cleanly and with good care taken from the wild. Alrighty, thank you so much, Jesse. That ends our segment here for us. So we're going to hand it back to you and bring in our friend from UTSC to join us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mary Ellen. A quick note before we bring in Mark to tell us a little bit more about some cool stuff going on, that the connection's a little bit worse there. So for Q&A, if the school group has moved, it might be better to move back to our snake friends. Just keep that in mind. But we will head to Mark Fitzpatrick. Again, this is a joint broadcast between us at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, your Toronto Zoo, and the University of Toronto Scarborough campus. So Mark's going to join us today to tell us a little bit about some really cool animal facts and features. And welcome to the broadcast, Mark.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jesse. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'm really excited. I love seeing those bearded dragons and the Massasauga rattlesnake. So, but I'm an insect biologist. I really don't care about lizards, and So I'm going to talk to you only about insects.
Uh,
So I'm only kidding. Can I share my screen? I want to show you
Yeah.
about one insect, though. We got to do this from the beginning.
Please do bring that up. And I mean, from an insect perspective, reptiles are the villains in their story in many cases. So you can understand why you're a little reluctant. But let's dive in. And we got up your screen. You're good to go, man.
Right. So here's a spider. And it's, I don't know why it's just going in a circle here. But would you be surprised if I told you that this isn't a spider? And in fact, I actually do like reptiles. And the only thing you're looking at here is a reptile. This is a horned viper. It is, here's its head here. Its eyes are right here. And it's laying across a rock. And what you're looking at that looks like a spider going back and forth is an adaptation of its tail. And so it's sitting there, blended in with the rock, moving its tail in the behavior like a spider would do, waiting for a bird to come along, and then it pounces and grabs them. So this is a cool video. I'm interested in animal behavior and adaptations. And here we have the adaptation of the snake's coloration. We have the adaptation of its behavior to lay flat, the adaptation of the tail to mimic, to look very close to like a desert rock living spider, and how it can move that tail to look like a spider. So anyway, I was only kidding. I actually really do like reptiles.
What a spectacular shot. Oh.
So I thought what I'd talk about today are centered around a few simple questions. One is, why is preserving biodiversity important? Since we did start off talking about turtles, why should we pay special attention to turtles? And maybe we'll leave with the last bit about talking about the fact that dinosaurs aren't extinct. Biodiversity is the term we use to talk about all of the organisms on Earth, from the smallest little bacteria and microbes to the biggest great blue whale. And we want to preserve as much of this diversity on Earth, because it is this diversity that gives life to Earth. But we're altering the Earth, and the organisms are suffering. So our pollution, like these bottles here that are making their way, are choking out habitats. We're cutting down trees to use those logs for other things, but mostly to build places where people can live. And our pollution is changing the atmosphere and the climate of the Earth. And this is having negative impacts on organisms. And what we're noticing is that as time is going by, we are losing biodiversity. So this image is showing you where these, especially where these pockets of biodiversity loss are happening. The darker the red, the more diversity loss that we have seen. So in North America, it's kind of centered on the central US, but we do have a bit here, which is where U of T and the Toronto Zoo is. U of T Scarborough, by the way, is about like literally a walk away from the Toronto Zoo. And one other area, particularly here, is where a lot of the rainforests are being cut down in Brazil. And we know that our impacts and all of this loss that we're seeing right now is not natural loss. I mean, there is natural loss going on in the background, but almost all of this is caused by humans. And we are seeing a change in the rate of extinctions of animals over time. This is the 1500s, the 18 to 1900, and then look at what happens in the number of extinctions over time. Mammals and birds, we're seeing massive extinctions. Also, we're seeing this in reptiles and amphibians. This dotted line is basically the line of where we would expect it to be if everything was carrying on without any of these problems being introduced. So the green line is basically looking at all of the vertebrates put together. And we really need to do something about this. You, I'm sure, hear all these discussions about climate change, about stopping pollution, and about preserving biodiversity. In particular, wetlands are in trouble. The wetlands themselves are becoming poorer and poorer quality as pollution and stuff starts to set in. And in fact, a lot of wetlands are being reappropriated for things like highways and subdivisions. And this then makes it difficult for those animals that are living in those places to survive. In particular, as Mary Ellen was saying, the turtles are a problem, or are having a really hard time. She showed you a Blandings turtle, which was in the video, and snapping turtles are two that I will talk to you about. But in fact, pretty much all of the turtles in Ontario are struggling right now. One of the problems, or one of the reasons that turtles need our particular attention, is that they take a long time to grow to a point that they are able to reproduce. For Blandings turtles, they're about 15 years old. For snapping turtles, they're about 17 years old. A mouse, for example, that is born is basically ready to have babies within that same year. Blanding turtles lay about 10 eggs every time they make a nest. Snapping turtles can be about 20 to 40 eggs, but they both live about 5, possibly over 100 years in the case of the snapping turtles. So why do we need to pay special attention to them? Well, one, even though they're laying eggs, once they become reproductive, they're laying eggs year after year after year. The reality is that very few of those babies make it to adulthood. So about 1 in 1,400 eggs survive to adulthood. If a female snapping turtle is laying about 40 eggs per brood, that's per nest, and she can reproduce, and we know from data from University of Guelph, working at the Algonquin Research Center, they can reproduce for over 40 years. So if we take one individual female that lays 40 eggs every year for 40 eggs, that means she has laid herself 1,600 eggs. But the reality of that is probably just one of those eggs is what's going to survive to make it to adulthood. We found a nice little snapping turtle baby. This is my son, Evan. We found this just about a month ago. It must have just hatched. And there's a pond just to Evan's side here. So we picked up this little turtle and made sure that it got to the pond safely. The other thing is that they take a long time to have their babies. So here we're looking at a snapping turtle, say a moose, and a deer in their first year. This is the year they're born. In year 1, the moose is still young, but that deer is now able to have babies. So by year 2, the snapping turtle is still growing, the moose is now mature, and that deer could have had one baby. By year 3, the snapping turtle is still growing, the moose has potentially a baby, and now that baby deer is also grown up, and maybe now they have 2 baby deers. And it continues until year 17, all of this time. If a moose reproduces every year and its babies are reproducing, there could be close to 700 moose come from that one at the beginning. There could be over 900 deer, potentially, if everybody survives. And all of that time, the turtle has just been growing. It hasn't even laid its first bunch of eggs yet. So we really need to make sure that we care for the turtles. We need to make sure that we preserve them and take care of them as much as possible, because most of the population are actually young, not able to reproduce. So any of these turtles that are old enough to reproduce, they are very, very valuable to the population and to the preservation of the species. So Mary Ellen talked to you about the Head Start program and the Reintroduction Program that the Toronto Zoo does. And I've worked a little bit over time and been part of the reintroduction process with the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre, used to be called the Kawartha Turtle Trauma Centre. They basically bring in hurt turtles and they take care of them. Veterinarians put their shells back together to hopefully return them to the wild so they can have babies. There's a great documentary that the CBC produced, if you wanted to take a look, where they're bringing in turtles, all different species that have, say, been hit by cars or boat propellers, injured by fish hooks or by natural causes. And they use things that you can find around your house, like duct tape and zip ties and wire, to bring their shells back together and take care of them for however long it needs, and then we return them. And so I was part of a return of some painted turtles into a little bit, just about an hour or two north of Toronto. So we did this with my 3 kids a couple of years ago, and it was a lot of fun. In the middle of the night, we did it just because it took us that long to get there. So what can we do to preserve biodiversity? Well, this line basically shows us what's happening with biodiversity. And now we essentially have 3 options. The green option, right? Green is good. The green option is if we put in place and continue with our efforts to conserve species, to take care of species, and to more sustainable production of food for us and everything else, and being better with pollution. If we only do the conservation efforts, we will see a little bit of more of a loss of biodiversity. But the real problem is if we continue on this path that we're on right now, biodiversity is potentially going to be at an extremely low point by 2100, which is only less than 80 years away. All right, so now for the second part, since we are talking about reptiles, the most coolest reptile, dinosaurs, they didn't go extinct. They're here. You see them every day. You might not know you're seeing them. You might not know they're dinosaurs. And if you do, don't ruin the story for everyone else. We know that an asteroid hit just off the coast of Mexico 66 million years ago. And the story goes that the outcome of that asteroid hit is that dinosaurs, which were the dominant animals on Earth at the time, were extinct. But we have a photograph of a foot of a dinosaur. This is a real photograph. This isn't made on a computer. This is the foot of a dinosaur. Now, it's actually not the foot of a dinosaur. It's the foot of a bird called the cassowary that lives in Australia. They're a very primitive, ancient bird. Its lineage goes back about 60 million years ago. And we know by looking at the trees of life, which is what we use to try and reconstruct how life may have looked and the relationships amongst animals that are alive today, we know that the theropods, these are a group of dinosaurs that walked on 2 legs, just like birds, are the group that gave rise to modern birds. So here is the reptiles in orange, and we've got mammals here shown with a chimpanzee. But here's where the snakes are. The turtles are in this group. Then we have crocodiles. And then here are the dinosaurs, the pterosaurs, the ornithischians, the sauropods, and the theropods. All of the pterosaurs, ornithischians, and sauropods are extinct. And their only lineage that continues right now is the theropods. Now, it wasn't as if the dinosaurs went extinct and this one group of theropods just became the birds. It turns out that the bird-like dinosaurs had been around for a long time, as much as 150, 160 million years. This is way back into this time here, during the time that all of these other dinosaurs, some names that you might see here that you recognize on this map. In fact, Archaeopteryx is right here. This is one that we're going to talk about in a second. Why did these bird-like dinosaurs survive? Well, most of them are small. Small means that they grow faster, they reproduce faster, they don't need as many resources, and they can also adapt quicker because when organisms are smaller, they generally have a faster life cycle. Birds also can pretty much eat anything. Sure, some specialize on certain things, but for the most part, they can eat anything. If they're eating anything and they're small, they're not eating much of it, they don't need a lot to continue. And the biggest thing is that they can fly. They can move themselves around, find new habitats, escape predation, so much better than many other organisms that need to walk or run, or some are even very slow moving. So back 130 million years ago, when the big dinosaurs that you know from TV shows and movies were walking, so was something like this. This is Pelecanamimys. This is an artist's 3D reconstruction. We don't necessarily know what the skin and the outer part look like, but this is what they think it could have looked like. And it's kind of a pelican type of theropod. Here it's feeding on something like a frog, would have been walking around at the same time as some of the dinosaurs. 165 million years ago, discovered in 2009, is this fossil of Tianlong. This was some of the beginning evidence, or not the beginning evidence, some of the earliest evidence that dinosaurs were not entirely covered in scales like we see with crocodiles and snakes. They had these projections, hair-like projections, which eventually, as we know, became feathers. Archaeopteryx, this was the fossil that changed our view. This was discovered by a farmer in Germany in 1861, dates back 150 million years ago. And it was this fossil, I think Archaeopteryx was about the size of a chicken. And you can see what really piqued the interest is there were these things coming off that were the outlines of where feathers used to be. Archaeopteryx is sometimes called the transition species because it has features of reptiles and features of birds. It's got the claws. It could have potentially gripped onto a log like we know birds can do. It had feathers like we know birds do, but it had a long tail. That's not very bird-like. And that long tail is a bony tail. You can see that. Bird tails, if they do have a tail, it's all feather. They also have these claws sticking out, and we've never seen claws on a bird. They also have something birds don't have, and that's teeth. So essentially, Archaeopteryx was a lizard bird. And we've been filling the gaps both forward and back over time, trying to understand the process of how this group became the birds. This fossil was discovered in 2015. It's Archaeonithura, and it dates back to 130 million years ago. So it lived around the time of Archaeopteryx, but this is distinctly very bird-like. It's very small, about 15 centimeters tall. It has a short rump like we know a bird does. It doesn't have that bony tail. Its tail is fanned, which is important for flight. And scientists think that this was probably an avid flyer. It also has some features that were preserved that make us think that that wing was capable of flying. Archaeopteryx maybe was able to kind of jump and glide, but they think that Archaeonithura was flying at as far as 130 million years ago. So now if anybody asks you that question that people like to ask all the time, what came first, the chicken or the egg? And you basically say, well, the chicken. Well, what did the chicken hatch from? And you say an egg. And then they say, well, who laid the egg? And then you say a chicken, and you keep going. You've got the answer. The answer is a dinosaur egg.
Fantastic. Mark, thank you so much for this. Again, we get this unique opportunity to have sort of a double broadcast with you guys all today. So I appreciate the science. We got the chance to hang out in the zoo. We got the chance to hear about some really amazing research, highlight that dinosaurs aren't gone, and dinosaurs are very cool. There's a lot of crows around where I am in Corner Brook, Newfoundland, and those are our dinosaurs. They're constantly sort of picking apart my recycling and garbage. I'm sure we all have our own dinosaur stories at home. But what we're going to do now, folks, is dive in with our question and answer period. We've got about 10 minutes. We're going to go a little long together because we're rebels. So we'll say a huge thank you to Mark. If you do have questions for Mark, feel free to share those as we come to our live classes, YouTube and Facebook groups. You guys can share questions in the chat as well. And of course, we'll head back to Mary Ellen and Morgan at the zoo if you have queries for them. So let's begin with Stony Plain Central, our team joining us in Alberta. If you guys have a question to kick us off, welcome to the broadcast and unmute your mic. You guys?
Hi, Zoe. Hi. How many stomachs do reptiles have?
Ooh, stomachs do reptiles have? Toronto Zoo team, I'll come to you guys for that one.
Wow, that is a very unique question. So I'll first by saying I'll introduce our friend who's in front of us. So we do have Keelat right here. We're going to switch it up between a few of our reptile friends here for the Q&A. But we've got Keelat here in front of us. He's our Komodo Dragon. So how many stomachs do they have? There's a kind of interesting thing. It depends on what you eat, kind of determines how many different stomachs you have. So for most reptiles, I'm going to say that the rule of thumb for them is they have one stomach. They tend to be meat eaters, a little bit of vegetation as well, but they primarily have one. Animals like cows and giraffes, they're what's called ruminants, and they actually have one stomach, but it's got 4 different chambers to it to really help them digest all the plant material that they have.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mary Ellen. Let's head to our next crew joining us in Flemington, New Jersey. If you guys want to come in, unmute your mic. You're good to go. All our teachers can unmute their mics.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
All right, hold on. She's coming in. Sorry. Here. Hi, I wanted to ask, how do the turtle shells grow? Or like,
Ooh,
how are they?
yeah. How do the turtle shells grow?
That's a great question. Let me come down actually here to a live turtle. We've got our little friend here. We'll get in nice and close to them. So not everyone knows this because unfortunately, and kind of funny, but also cartoons have kind of lied to us over our lifetime. And they frequently show us that turtles can exit their shells and be able to kind of walk around without their shell. And that's just not true. If you are to reach around and feel your back, in the very middle of your back, you're going to feel some hard bone, and that is your spine. So you can reach around, it goes all the way up. You can also touch the back of your neck, just as Jesse's demonstrating for us there. And that is your spine. That's kind of what's holding all of your skeletal system together. Now the turtles actually have one too, and it runs right along the inside of their shell. And that's a way that we know if you were to flip their shell inside out, and you were looking at the inside of it, their spine is right there connected to their body. So when they're born, it's a little bit softer. And as they get older, their shell grows with them. And these are called scutes here. These are the kind of shapes that we see on their shell. We've even got a turtle friend up out of the water right now up there as well. Their shell just grows with them, just like your skin and your bones grow with you as you age as well.
Great question, guys. Thanks, Mary Ellen. Let's head to Miss Erickson's class. If you guys want to unmute your mic, come on in. We're whipping through these guys. This is great. Come on in. Unmute, though. Come chat with us. There you are. Hi.
My question is, are bearded dragons smart?
Are bearded dragons smart? No pressure. The bearded dragon's right there.
No pressure. Well, it's a bit of a cheating answer here, but I always like to say that animals are as smart as they need to be to survive. So that's a general rule of thumb. It's hard to be able to compare different animals and their intelligence because they live in different habitats. They eat different things and they need different things to survive. So different food, water, shelter. So it's a little bit difficult to compare them all together. But you know what? They do a good job of surviving in their hot habitat. Something that I could probably not do. I'm very much a winter, cold weather person. So compared to me, I think they're pretty good and pretty smart at surviving in their habitat.
I think that's a very nuanced and good answer. Miss Fisher's class, come on in, guys. We've got groups today joining us from Nova Scotia, New Jersey, Alberta, BC, all over Canada, the United States. It's so exciting to have everybody. So Miss Fisher, come on in. Take us away. Hey, guys. Hello.
All right. Oh, we already had me.
Yeah.
How many venomous snakes do you guys have?
Ooh, how many venomous snakes at the zoo, Mary Ellen?
You can leave it.
Oh, you're muted at the zoo.
Yep, there you go.
So here in Ontario, we only have one venomous snake, and that is the eastern Massasauga rattlesnake. So the one that I was talking about of how we have that breeding program here at the Toronto Zoo. So that is the only venomous snake here in Ontario that you can find. So only one to worry about.
Yes, in the zoo itself, on the grounds, do you have any other venomous species from other places in the world out of curiosity?
Yes, we definitely do. So in Indomalaya, I believe we have a cobra in there. I'm trying to walk through all the pavilions here in my head. In this pavilion alone, we have 3 types of snakes, but these ones here are all constrictors. So there's venomous snakes and constrictors, and we like to use a little trick here at the zoo. We say C for constrictors, they close in to kill their prey, and V for venomous, turn into fangs, and they bite their prey. So these 3 here are all constrictors, so they are not venomous. So we don't have that many here, but not to worry. For the ones that we do have, we also carry their anti-venom, which is a very important safety measure.
Fantastic. I'm glad that it's called anti-venom now as opposed to anti-venom, which is what I was as a kid. They changed that to make it a little bit more, reasonable for everybody. It's a small, weird, nerdy fact of the day. I want to note it is at the 45-minute mark. We're going to go to all our other live classes for questions, but if you do have to go for whatever reason on YouTube or Facebook, we are going to have a Padlet for today's broadcast. So I've shared this in both of our chats for everybody, but you can share on the virtual whiteboard here any additional questions you don't get answered about reptiles for the zoo team or for Mark to answer after the fact. So feel free to check that out. Again, I'll make sure that's in our chat for everybody. Holy Family School, Miss Francis Group joining us in lovely Red Deer. If you guys want to come on up, you're good to go. Hey, guys.
Hey,
Come on up.
come and ask. Come up here. just talk right into that.
How did dinosaurs come to Earth?
Ooh, dinosaurs come to Earth. Mark, I'm coming to you for this one. How did we get dinosaurs here?
Well, they started as bacteria long ago. They arose slowly over time. They evolved. So life arose, we think, about 3.5 billion years ago. There was basically just water on Earth. And that life, all life that is on Earth right now, started at one point, and everything on Earth that is currently living and has ever lived on Earth is related to each other in the tree of life. And of course, things that are more closely related to each other are more similar. Their genomes, their DNA is more similar. Things that are farther apart are more distant, but we can still link them all together. So dinosaurs evolved over time.
It's such a cool fact that you are related to a tree or to an amoeba or to a chimpanzee or Komodo dragon. I mean, this is one of the most fundamental and amazing things that we've ever discovered as mankind in terms of our science. Dinosaurs specifically arise around 240 million years ago. We get our first things that we start really thinking of as dinosaurs. Things only came out of the water about 370 million years ago. So we have our first amphibians and things crawling out from fishy ancestors around then, and dinosaurs evolved about 100 and something million years after that. Great question, guys. Ms. Ramos's class, third graders, if you guys want to come on in and ask your question, you are good to go. And Ms. Avila will come to you guys next. Hey, guys.
Hi, Jesse. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Where are the snakes' habitat and what do they eat?
Ooh, where's snakes' habitat and what do they eat? Mary Ellen Morgan, I'm going to come back to you guys for this one.
Oh, I love that question. So there are snakes all over the world. So you can find them pretty much everywhere except for Antarctica. That's about their only place where they're not natively found. And in those different habitats, they do eat some overlapping things together. I've already introduced this snake here, but they're my favorite snake in the zoo because their name is the red-tailed green rat snake. And I really like them because they're a descriptive species. Everything you need to know about that snake is listed there in their name. So if you haven't guessed it by now, the rat snake eats rats and mice. Very convenient. They're also green in color, and they've got a reddish colored tail, and they are a snake. So you can see that all the info for that species is listed right there in their name, which is great. And that's a pretty common snack for snakes all over the world. Obviously, when they're smaller or babies, they need to eat a smaller prey item. And as they get bigger, they can take on other items like rabbits or even small goats as well.
I love that that's your reason for it. Similarly, my favorite Latin name in the entire world is for the gorilla, because its Latin name is gorilla. Makes it very easy. You don't need any specialized knowledge to get that. I know our classes have to go in a minute, so again, I'll note for our live groups and for everyone else, you can head to the Padlet to share additional questions, but I want to wrap up in Miami, Florida with Miss Avila's class. Unmute your mic. Come on in, guys, if you have one more question to wrap us up in our live program. Welcome in. Unmute, and then come on up. Perfect. Hello, everybody.
Hello. How much years does it take for a snake to take off to molt?
To molt? Good question.
Okay, so I think that was how long does it take for a snake to get old enough to move? Jesse, was that it?
No, to molt. So when they shed their skin, which I think is
to molt. Yeah, so when they shed their skin. Oh, I wish I had a snake shed with me here. That would have been perfect. So you're right. Snakes will shed their skin, and when they're babies, they do it almost right away. So in their little egg that they're born in, it's kind of it's leathery in texture. It's a very soft and squishy egg, not like a chicken egg that you might be familiar with that's hard shell. And inside of it is lots of ooey and gooey and blood vessels and everything they need to survive. So when they first come out of their egg and they emerge, they actually kind of shed off that first layer that they were staying with. And that starts their molting process. Now, when they're babies, they molt very frequently. It can happen every week or so as they're growing and getting bigger. Once they get to full size, like this snake here, he's about full size for a rat snake. They don't molt as often, only when they need to. If they have a damaged scale, they'll molt then to get rid of that damaged one. But they often will just kind of molt less often, maybe every couple of months if needed.
fantastic. Mary Ellen, I'm going to put you guys in the background just one more quick second. I'm going to bring you and Mark back in just a minute to do a quick wrap up and goodbye with all our classes. But I want to note a couple things to keep the learning going for all our classes. So first and foremost, if you want to check out all our amazing programs with the Toronto Zoo, check out our YouTube channel at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So much on the go there. If you're keen on snakes particularly, which a lot of our audience was, we just did a program with Kurt Schwenk, Dr. Kurt Schwenk, not too long ago if you want to learn more about snakes. And upcoming very soon, we've got our Hope for Wildlife series. So we got the chance to hear about some of the amazing conservation work being done at the zoo today. If you want to hear from some of the world's leading scientists with purely positive conservation stories, check out our link below or the special events page on our website. And of course, if you want to learn more about the Toronto Zoo, get involved. Go to torontozoo.com. Everything's there. Specifically, their Adopt a Pond program is at the link below. Check out that Adopt a Pond app. And Mark was kind enough to share OntarioTurtle.ca, a really fantastic organization and group if you want to help conserve turtles in the Ontario area. Now, Mark and Mary Ellen, I'm going to bring you back both into the broadcast. I just want to say personally a big thank you both for joining us today. And Mark, I'll lead off with you. Is there a last message about reptiles you want to share with us before we head to Mary Ellen and the zoo team?
Last message. Maybe I might start studying them soon. It's pretty cool. It's been fun to work on this. And yeah, I love it.
Fantastic. Mary Ellen Morgan?
Yeah, for sure. So we just want to make sure that everyone today had such a great time, and definitely check out that Adopt a Pond app. Check out the Toronto Zoo. We are open again, and we are back doing on-site tours, but we're of course going to stay doing our virtual programs. We love them so very much, and we can't wait to see everybody next month for our nutrition talk.
Woohoo! Awesome. Well, I certainly can't wait for that. Check out our newsletter at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants to find that info about that. And Mark, I know you're new to this, but Mary Ellen and Morgan are old pros. What we do to end every broadcast, I'm going to bring in all our hyper-enthused classes to say a big thank you and farewell. Stony Plain Central, Miss Fisher, Holy Family, Miss Ramos, Miss Avila's class. Thank you all so much. You guys are great. Thank you.